I'm Aaron Long,
I'm Mallory Petrella.
and today we're going to teach you how the human brain allows us to enjoy a favorite college pastime. As an Ohio University student, you've probably attended at least one football game, and at that football game, you've probably enjoyed a performance by the Ohio University Marching 110. What, in all likelihood, you haven't considered is how psychology factors into our enjoyment of the band and even allows us to perceive what a band is. First off, imagine you're looking at a group of people. Now, none of these people look the same, but they have one thing in common, and that is proximity. Now, this is where we begin discussing the Gestalt principles of grouping. The Gestalt principles of grouping are a set of criteria that allow us to perceive the world around us, and more specifically, the relationships between things in the world around us. So the Gestalt principle of grouping as it relates to proximity. What this tells us is that people standing near each other probably have something in common, even if they look different, even if they're dressed different, even if they're speaking differently. So, we start off with these 5 individuals. We can pretend, for our purposes, that they're members of a band. Even though, well, these terrible drawings actually do look quite similar. But if we were to imagine a more diverse group of people, just the fact that these people are standing within a proximity to each other tells us they may have a relationship to one another. And this is the first step in understanding how human beings can perceive and enjoy a marching band.
With that, we pull in the texture, which is now you see all of the characters have an orange hat as well as they're still facing the same way and still in the same formation. This is pulling in OU's Marching 110 same color, how they're black and white and green, and also how all the hats go the same way, they carry the instruments the same way, and they go in a specific order in order to create that design or character they're trying to spell out. Okay, for similarity, we have a group of characters that have all the same hat, same way, facing the same formation, and this is representing similarity, which pulls in the uniforms of the OU Marching 110, and also how they're performing and the designs and the specific drawings and designs they draw out for the audience.
Hey, this is Aaron Long. I'm back to discuss the last 3 Gestalt principles of grouping. At this point, we've discussed how similarity, proximity, and texture allow us to perceive intergroup relationships in a marching band, but there are 3 more relevant principles to discuss, the first of which is the Gestalt grouping principle of continuity. So we've got our classic diagram back here, the individuals with the orange hats, but you'll notice that we've drawn a line around them. What this illustrates is how the principle of continuity affects our perception. We have stopped perceiving these as individuals, as atomized objects, and are perceiving a common whole, a unified whole, a fluid one. This is vital to how we perceive a marching band, and it's vital to how we perceive their formations. But it layers with the other 2 principles we're discussing today. For one, the Gestalt grouping principle of common fate. Very similar diagram here, but what you'll see is we've drawn arrows. This indicates how the principle of common fate affects our perception. Not only are we perceiving these individuals as a common whole, a unified whole, because they are in close proximity to each other and because they are moving similarly, we are also perceiving them this way because they're moving in a common direction. We have a tendency to do this. For instance, when we see birds flying in a flock, we see a unified whole because they're all going in the same direction. They're using a similar type of movement. But this all plays into the final Gestalt grouping principle we're discussing, which is that of closure. Now, the Marching 110 we were just discussing doesn't do a whole lot with closure. They don't do a whole lot of script writing. However, the Ohio State Marching Band does, most famously in their script Ohio, which we have written backwards here for your comprehension. So essentially what the principle of closure illustrates is how when we see isolated objects forming a recognizable pattern, we see the pattern and not necessarily those objects. So if I were to spell out my name in pebbles, Aaron, you would read that as Aaron. You wouldn't necessarily perceive the pebbles, or at the very least, they wouldn't be the most salient thing you were perceiving. Similarly, when the members of the Ohio State Marching Band form Script Ohio, we see Script Ohio. We don't just see a bunch of members in a band, even when we're dealing with the most important individual, the dot on the I. So in conclusion, we've discussed how the Gestalt grouping principles of proximity, similarity, texture, common fate, continuity, and closure allow us to perceive a marching band not as these isolated atoms moving randomly, but as a group of individuals with a common purpose, a unified whole moving in patterns that we can recognize. This is what allows us to enjoy a marching band, or for that matter, militaries wearing shared uniforms and moving in drills. These patterns persist throughout human culture, and really, we learn quite a great deal by examining how psychology and how the principles impacting our perception allow us to take in the world around us and really properly enjoy it. Thanks for learning with us today.